Every time I get some news from Hi Rez, my heart always breaks a little bit because I already know what's coming. It's never really a good thing. And this time we got some really bad news regarding their 3D fighting game Divine Knockout. You know, the Super Smash Bros-like kind of fighting game that came out in December of 2022, that by March of 2023, just 4 months after release, it had already been abandoned by Hi Rez. Yeah, that one. It looks like the developers are finally throwing in the towel with Divine Knockout, and they're shutting the servers down on February 17th, 2025. So on their update post on the Steam page, they mentioned that as part of Hi Rez's most recent reorganization, the game is going to be removed from the digital storefronts and you will no longer be able to purchase it or any related content such as DLC. They also mentioned that they made all the skins and gods effectively free for people to be able to enjoy them until they close down the servers. But one important thing that's not mentioned anywhere in this post is that nobody's getting refunded for anything they might have bought inside the game, like battle passes, microtransactions, or like even the cost of the game itself. Because I don't know if you guys remember, but when the game initially came out, there was a free-to-claim period. I think it was like for a week or a weekend or something, and then afterwards the game was $25 to buy. And I know that they're not technically obliged to do refunds, you know, it's not like Hi Rez can even afford to do them these days with how horrible the company's doing, but you know, I just know that a lot of people are going to be upset at this because, you know, it's money that they spent inside the game on cosmetics, on god tokens or whatever, you know, then that's all going to be gone forever. And because we've also had games like Rumbleverse or Concord that do offer full refunds when they decide to shut down, well, I think that we've been spoiled a little bit with a few companies that can actually afford it, and now people are just expecting every time that a live service game is to shut down to just refund every single penny they've ever spent in the game. So obviously it sucks that whenever Hi Rez decides to do the one thing that they're best known for inside the gaming industry, which is to release a banger video game like Paladins, Rum Royale, Divine Knockout, get a surge of players that instantly are hooked with the game, and then they just proceed to mismanage or just outright abandon the game's development. It sucks when that happens. It's terrible. You know, it leaves people feeling, you know, super frustrated and wondering what exactly went wrong. And Divine Knockout, even though I thought it was a great game when it first came out, you know, all the way back in 2022, it was really easy to pick up. You know, I didn't need to study frame data. I didn't need to like learn all the combos to start having fun. And the way that they were marketing the game towards like the Super Smash Bros. Community and the fighting game community, Hi Rez was hosting tournaments, getting creator skins like Tim the Tatman and everything. You know, they were doing a lot of noise and hoopla surrounding Divine Knockout. But with the way that the game was handled from the start, unfortunately, you could just tell from a mile away that things were just going to go downhill. I'm not going to get into character balancing or anything like that because despite the fact that the game had a few broken kill confirms here and there, Amaterasu being a perfect example of this, I don't honestly remember if all of that got patched out or fixed, you know, I'm assuming it did. But you also have to remember that it's Hi Rez at the end of the day, you know, they always try to make a game that's very casual and accessible, like Paladins or Rogue Company, for example. They always try to shoehorn esports into the game, which honestly I think should be ignored because I think that's more for marketing than anything else. Like the esports things never really ends up working out for Hi Rez. And then at the end of the day, they just keep going back to keeping things casual, like how they did with Rogue Company. You know, it's a perfect example. The main issue that I think really killed Divine Knockout from the get-go was all the aggressive monetization that they tried to push early on. You know, to their merit, DKO did have a free-to-claim period when it was first announced. I can't remember if it was like a day or a weekend or something, but that's how I got Divine Knockout. You know, I got it for free. After that, the game was priced at $25 upfront to be able to play, and the amount of content you got for the $25 just didn't really sit well with a lot of people because it didn't give you access to all the gods in the game. You still had to grind and level up your gods to farm these god tokens to unlock new characters, and that would be all fine and dandy, but like the amount of free god tokens you can get was also pretty limited, so you really couldn't unlock all the gods for free, and they only got exponentially harder every time you got a new god token. So the game was really pushing people to pay extra just to have access to all the gods on the roster, which was another expense on top of the $25 initial price. And on top of all of that, you also had the battle pass system, you had an item shop, you know, all of those elements that you could normally find inside of a cash grab game. Divine Knockout for some reason was just full of them, you know, and the game itself wasn't really worth the $25 because all you had to play inside of Divine Knockout was the unranked mode, you had a ranked mode, a few game modes here and there like King of the Hill and collect the coins, but other than that, that was it. There was no single player content in the game, there was no campaign or anything. It was really just a live service online matchmaking at the end of the day. And just like with any live service game that's out there, you have the running issue that you need to have players playing the game in order to have the matchmaking system work in the first place. So right after the game came out and people kind of just dropped it, well, you know, the matchmaking only got harder and harder. Divine Knockout did eventually end up going free to play to kind of just solve the player base issue, but they did that like way later into the game's lifespan, and like to the point where everyone had already moved on from it. So it took Hi Rez way too long to fix a problem that they should have really never had in the first place, because if you have so many different monetization systems inside of the game itself, the $25 upfront price tag, for me, and in my opinion, it was just a horrible idea. The other big thing that really killed all the hype that Hi Rez built surrounding Divine Knockout, and the reason why a lot of the players abandoned it in just a few months after release, is because the developers themselves abandoned the game just 4 months after release. Like, they went completely radio silent on social media, they left the game running in maintenance mode, which is really just confusing for a lot of people back in the day, because Hi Rez went from marketing, from tournaments, announcing new gods here and there, creator skins too, all of that jazz, just to practically pretend like the game never existed in the first place in such a short amount of time. With hindsight being 2020, now we can see that it was all caused by one of their many company restructurings. Hi Rez is a studio that's been failing for a very long time now, and they've been cutting corners, they've been cutting studios, and now it's up to the point where they're just throwing out that last Hail Mary, hoping that their latest release, Smite 2, is the one that ends up saving the company, but it's a company that's been struggling for years at this point. A lot of the studios have been getting consolidated, the staff members have been getting laid off, but when you're dealing with a live service game that has a battle pass, a rotating shop, and concurrent players, which are the lifeblood of said game, being relevant on social media, communicating with your player base, that's like the bare minimum you have to do in order to keep a game like this running. So the fact that the first thing that they decided to cut was communications with the player base was already enough for people to see that, Divine Knockout was just never going to make it. In fact, at this point, DKO has been so abandoned that they haven't even announced on their official Divine Knockout Twitter X account that the game's actually shutting down. So if you haven't checked the Steam page, you have no idea the game's dying. But what I also found funny when I was checking the DKO announcements is that they've been using those announcements to promote Smite 2. Like, that's all Divine Knockout was worth for Hi Rez at some point. It's just a dead page to promote their new game. All in all though, I'm not gonna lie and say that I've spent endless amounts of time and money supporting Divine Knockout, and that I'm just absolutely disgusted by all these horrible actions taken by Hi Rez. How dare they shut down my game? I really like the game. I really like Divine Knockout. I had my fun with it. Nobody could defeat my Thor unless they were clearly cheaters, which a lot of people were. But Divine Knockout itself just didn't really give me enough reasons to keep coming back to it again and again, which is something you need in a live service game. So unfortunately, Divine Knockout is just going to end up joining the pile of dead live service games that had a pretty unique gimmick or idea, like Spellbreak or Hyperscape, that just didn't provide enough content to have it survive over the long run. I also can't really say that I wish and hope that they give us some sort of like offline mode for Divine Knockout, because at the end of the day, all Divine Knockout had was the online matchmaking system, so it's not like they had a campaign mode or anything. What am I gonna do, just sit in the lobby or something? Yeah, there's nothing really to do. There's nothing really to it. I don't think it's the first one to die from Hi Rez. I'm pretty sure Realm Royale will be the next one to shut down, but we'll just have to wait and see, Another one bites the dust. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about with you guys, so thank you guys for watching.